Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range to talk about just simple blowback PCCs. It's kind of interesting because PCCs have evolved since I was a younger man, but the blowback just won't go away. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the old blowback guns and compare them to some of the new ones. Now, one of the classics is the Uzi Model B, like you see right here. I've had one of these guns, gosh, since I would say the early 90s, I think, is when I got my first Uzi Model B. But this one is an SBR, so they originally had a 16-inch barrel on them, and I have pretty much all the old original Uzis. But this is iconic and a classic. Has its extendable stock on it. This one is semi-automatic, fires from a closed bolt, but it is a semi-automatic, just simple blowback 9mm, and again, extremely iconic. But things have evolved a little bit, but how much? And why is blowback still popular in the age of roller delays and ball bearing delays and rotary delays and all the other cool stuff that we have out there? Well, we'll see if we can't answer that question in today's video. But let's start off shooting a few rounds out of the old Uzi Model B. It's always fun. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. The Uzi. I think everybody watching this video probably has some story to tell about the Uzi, being a kid, seeing it in an action movie, or seeing it at the Secret Service when President Reagan, the assassination attempt was carried out against him. One of the Secret Service agents had an Uzi that was under his sport coat. The Uzi is just iconic. But what is it about the gun that makes it so interesting? Well, it has a really cool look to it, but it was also a very reliable, simple, and robust weapon that was very easily manufactured. Now, it is an Israeli weapon. It uses a standard straight 9mm magazine, very heavy metal magazines, a very stiff spring inside of there to overcome the straight magazine. Curved magazines generally feed better in PCCs or in 9mm. But the ability to take it apart very quickly and easily is one of the things that always drew me to the gun. Now, this one has a few extra bits and pieces in it because it is semi-automatic, and that's because of the striker system and stuff that you wouldn't have in the open bolt submachine gun, which is basically all this stuff. The open bolt would just have a fixed firing pin and be a little bit more simple on the internal design, but still, even with the striker assembly, it's a very simple gun. As you can see, I can quickly get in there and clean this thing out. Taking the barrel out of it is just super simple. You just unscrew this barrel nut, and the barrel comes out. I mean, that is about as simple as it gets. Very, very cool weapon. And I always thought that the stock was kind of cool. So it folds and tucks away like that, and then to deploy it, you just give it a tap on the bottom and then pull it out, and it'll lock in the extended position. But you'll also find them with wooden stocks, which are cool in their own right. All right, so let's put some of these parts aside. There were other, and this video is not comprehensive by any means in terms of the firearms we want to show you here today. We're just kind of going down memory lane here and through some of the cool old PCCs of lore. So this is a Sterling Mark 6. It's a semi-automatic version of the Sterling submachine gun used by UK forces and other countries and other militaries and paramilitaries. But this, like the Uzi, which makes extensive use of stampings, is just a simple blowback. And this would be related to the earlier Sten gun that was very commonly used during World War II by the Brits and other people. And so you'll notice that it has a very simple construction to it, just tube steel, has a simple blowback bolt in there. This one feeds from the side. The magazines on these are really cool. They have little rollers in there, and you'll notice it's curved, a very reliable magazine. And these are actually very popular guns. You may ask yourself, why the magazine on the side? Because if you're in the military and you go prone, and you want to get as close as you can to the ground, having a 30-round magazine sticking out the bottom kind of limits how low you can get your weapon to the ground. Having a magazine out on the side, you can get extremely low in the prone position. So that was the concept behind it. This also has a folding stock, which just locks like this. You pull down on the stock, extend it, bring it around, push on this end cap, and the stock will extend in the full position. Now, I never did SBR this one, so this has a 16-inch barrel on it and a different barrel nut than you would find on the submachine gun versions. So originally the PCC, or the submachine gun, was intended to be a military weapon, of course, but to be extremely cheap and easy to manufacture. That's why the extensive use of stampings. And probably one of the more modern PCCs, if you will, because you could put stocks on these too, was something like the Tech 9. Now, these are all steel. This one uses just cheap, steel upper tubular, much like the Sterling, but it has a polymer lower. And so these things would have come into prominence in the 80s. And then, gosh, legislators and people like that went after these pretty hard and tried to ban them. The names would change, different manufacturers would come about, and finally the Tech 9 just kind of drifted off into history. But not known for its reliability. As a matter of fact, they're kind of known for needing a lot of work when you first get them out of the box. The magazines are very cheap, but these were popular in the 80s and 90s. Both, gangland seemed to like them, but also just regular shooters really enjoyed them. But they got a bad rap because they would show up every once in a while in the hands of criminals. But these guns have evolved. But the blowback system is still there. Now, keep in mind, guys, we have seen roller delays. Like, we have the Strebog. Of course, we have the famous HK94. We have new guns like the Kuna, which is kind of a copy, I think, of the Strebog. The Strebog is related to other firearms out there like the B&T, but they went from straight blowback. It evolved into a roller delay. But why roller delay versus blowback? Well, blowback relies on a big, heavy bolt and spring to delay the opening of the action until the bullet can get out of the barrel. It can safely cycle and pick up a fresh round and kick out that spent case. And so a delay system reduces the mass necessary to accomplish the same thing. So generally speaking, it'll reduce recoil and reduce the movement of the gun being fired, especially in fully automatic, but even it's noticeable in semi-automatics. So that's what all these guns have in common, is they have big, huge bolts. This is called a telescoping bolt because the barrel technically rides over the bolt rides over the barrel. So it kind of shortens the action. If the barrel stopped back here in a conventional configuration, it would lengthen the action of the gun. But with the telescoping bolt, the bolt overhangs the barrel. And so they did all sorts of stuff like that to try to get around some of the limiting factors of the blowback. But honestly, I still think that the delay systems are superior when it comes to that controllability. But when it comes to reliability and simplicity, I think that's probably why the blowback is sticking around. Many of them, outside of these are collectibles, can be manufactured very affordably. The more complicated the manufacturing, the more parts, the more bits, the more pieces, and the newer the design, typically that cost goes up, but not always, right? There are blowback guns out there. I'm going to show you one here in a few minutes that are really expensive, but they're still blowback. Let's take a look at some of the more modern designs and see how they stack up to some of the classics. So let's take a look at a B&T APC9. Now, this is easily one of my favorite 9mm subguns, or PCC, and I should clarify what PCC stands for those of you that are uninitiated. It stands for pistol caliber carbine. Now, it's kind of used universally to also describe pistols like the Tech 9. Some might classify this as a PCC because you can put stocks on various 9mm pistols like this that use a magazine outside of the pistol grip, like a conventional handgun. So the term's kind of thrown around. Sometimes it doesn't really apply, but we're calling these PCCs, and some of them are because these are actually carbines, SBRs. And this APC9 is an SBR. Now, what's interesting about this is, of course, it's a very modern design, a very high-quality manufacturer, B&T out of Switzerland, but also this gun just recently, relatively recently, became the first submachine gun adopted by the U.S. military in a very long time, since World War II, I believe. And so it's interesting in that regard, but it's also interesting that the U.S. government went with a simple blowback like the APC9. Now, this one negates some of those recoil forces I was talking about that's kind of inherent with a simple blowback mechanism with that big heavy bolt slapping around, and we'll show you how they did that with this particular gun. So the APC9 uses modern manufacturing. Most of the parts are machined. You do have a polymer lower down here. We'll have ambi fire controls. It's going to be lighter weight than the Uzi that we opened up the video with. You have a charging handle that can be moved over to the other side. You have 1913 rails now across the top, so you can put accessories like modern optics on there. This one has fold-down sights that are built into the gun, tri-lug barrel, but you can also get them with threaded barrels. And then, of course, it has a side-folding stock, being an SBR. And like many other PCCs, it does have guess I'm hitting the wrong button there, hitting the bolt release, thinking I'm hitting the mag release. It does have a magazine that's forward of the pistol grip. So most handguns would have a magazine in the pistol grip. You're going to find a lot of the PCCs will have the magazine forward of that. Not always, but generally something that you can apply to when you're trying to define what a PCC is versus just a standard handgun. Now, what's interesting about this little guy is how they've tried to mitigate that recoil. So I'm going to go ahead and take the gun apart here really quick for you guys. I'll make sure that's empty. I checked it before we started filming, but I'll do it on camera just because I know some folks out there will say, but you didn't check. Let me get the tip of a bullet here really quick. Get this pin started. Yeah, I'll lose that round for sure. So here on the back, we have a hydraulic buffer. And the faster you push it, the more resistance it's going to offer. And so this will decelerate that bolt. Now this is an early generation gun, and I was an early adopter, and this has a reciprocating charging handle, but the newer versions will not have a reciprocating charging handle. But here's your bolt. Now you can see that this bolt is considerably smaller than the Uzi bolt, and they both shoot 9mm. Let me go ahead and throw that on the ground. So there you can see the APC bolt versus the Uzi bolt. And this is the recoil spring for the APC. But this is what changes the recoil impulse measurably. And that's how it decelerates using a hydraulic patented buffer system that helps to tame that recoil from a simple blowback mechanism and make it shoot more like a delay system, like a bearing delay or a roller delay or whatever other type of delay out there, like the CMMG radial delays. And so that's how we've seen the system kind of evolve. But the downside is this is probably pretty expensive to manufacture. Now, the Swiss products are expensive in general, so this kind of it takes away one of the benefits, potential benefits of just simple blowback, and that's cost savings, because now we've added a complex buffering system that, among other things, the machining and the high quality parts, has brought the price of the firearm up. But it still has that extremely famous reliability of a simple blowback system. Sometimes you'll find, I did, like when I was shooting MP5s back in the day when I was buying machine guns, when I shot my MP5s a lot, I was replacing parts quite a bit. My fully automatic Uzis, I've never had to replace a part. Those things just run and run and run. So it's just that simplicity, fewer parts and all that good stuff. So the 9mm carbine is not a new concept. Colt did it with the AR-15 decades ago. And that's kind of evolved over the years into what you see here. This is a Daniel Defense. This is one of their new 9mm PCCs, and it's based on the AR-15. Now, they've shortened the upper and some things like that to kind of make the overall size a little bit smaller. They've purpose-built it to be a 9mm, where the early Colts were basically 5.56s that were converted into 9mm. And so it's evolved nicely. Now, the early Colts, the 9mm, I've often commented that the guns have more recoil than their 5.56 counterparts. They're just very jarring when they're firing. And again, you have a big bolt inside there that's just a simple blowback that's slapping around, and that tends to unsettle the gun when you're firing, especially quickly or as a submachine gun. And so I was never a very big fan of those early Colts, but guns like this DD have now evolved that system and made it far more pleasant to shoot. Now, I won't say it's as controllable. There's a little bit more punchiness to a gun like this versus something with the roller delay like an MP5 or HK94, but boy, is it really, really close and certainly nice. And again, it maintains that famous reliability of the simple blowback system. So what did DD do that was a little bit differently? Well, I've already mentioned that they've shortened the action a little bit, but it maintains AR-15 style fire controls. This now has ambi controls, so you have ambi selector levers over here, standard AR-15 furniture, so the pistol grip, the stock, things like that are just standard AR-15 fare. It does use CZ Scorpion magazines. These are very affordable, and Magpul even makes the things now, so they're reliable and well made. Has ambi ping pong paddle over here, so it has a bolt stop, bolt release, and then you have a mag release on both sides as well. And so this thing has evolved very, very nicely. It has that fixed ejector sitting right there. You can see it poking through the receiver, which is a replaceable part. And then, of course, your standard AR-15 style furniture, vertical fore-end grip. And then out here, we do have a threaded barrel. And on the end of that, we have a Griffin Armament 9mm suppressor. But with the 1913 rail across the top, we have the red dot sight mounted to the receiver for rigidity, but out here on the handguard, we do have a little D-ball out there, so you can put all the fancy accessories on something like this because of the M-lock and the 1913 rails. And then, of course, we have a T-handle back here for charging, but they can be grabbed from either side of the T-handle. But what also helps make this gun more controllable is the buffering system that it employs. Now, the nice thing is you can pick up buffering systems for other 9mm ARs. I'm going to hurt myself here. You can pick up buffering systems like this for other 9mm ARs, and it just drops into the receiver extension. But much like the B&T that I was talking about earlier, there's your buffering, your hydraulic buffering system right there. And so when the bolt comes back against this and it bottoms out in the rear, it'll decelerate that bolt with the hydraulic buffering system, and that will help mitigate some of that recoil that is known with just simple blowbacks like this. But as I've already mentioned, you can toss this type of a system into other guns out there, so you don't have to spend as much money as this DD, although the DD certainly is worth the money if you can afford it. But there are more affordable options out there. PSA makes a nice 9mm AR. They just recently introduced the DOE gun, which is a classic 9mm that's based on the Department of Energy firearm that was used by those teams that would deliver nuclear weapons and move those around the United States during the Cold War. So there's a bunch of stuff out there, and that thing's less than $1,000, that would allow you to get a 9mm AR like this. And again, if you want to put a buffering system in it and change the weights of the spring rates and stuff like that to help kind of mitigate some of that recoil impulse from the simple blowback, you can easily do that and simply do that just by jumping online and ordering the parts that you need. So, in my opinion, while this, and this thing's heavy as a brick, this is much lighter. While this is cool, lots of fun to shoot, not currently in production. IWI doesn't make them anymore. They haven't for a very long time. We've seen some companies come and go, bringing parts kits in and manufacturing receivers. Century Arms has done it, and some other Vector and some other companies have done it over the years, so they're out there. But the prices fluctuate, and if it's not made by IWI, the quality will also fluctuate. But then you can get something like the Daniel Defense, which in my opinion is probably one of the best examples of a modern simple blowback 9mm PCC out there, coupled with this, which is definitely one of my favorites, the APC9 from B&T. Both of these, again, featuring that buffering system. If I had to pick between the two, it's a very tough pick. I've historically been, a fan of the APC9 since they came out. I seriously love them, but this DD has grown on me, it's grown on Jason, and everybody I've allowed to shoot it. So you have some pretty good options out there. It's just a matter of you going out and taking a look at what's available. Don't immediately poo-poo the concept of a direct or simple blowback system. Check out what's on the market, see what works for you and what you can afford, and then kind of go from there. But also check out a lot of reviews, not just ours. If you watch the Military Arms channel, you'll know I'm a huge fan of PCCs. I just simply enjoy shooting them, but I also think that they make fine self-defense firearms. I keep a 9mm PCC by my bed with a suppressor on it for those times when something goes bump in the night, but I also keep a handgun. A long gun is easier to wield. It's generally accepted that rifles like this are better for fighting versus a handgun, but I like options. So I like to have a 9mm handgun and a 9mm PCC by the bed. But they're a lot of fun to shoot. They're affordable to shoot, generally speaking. 9mm can be had very economically, especially if you reload. And so 9mm really is both effective, especially out of longer barrels. You can get plus P cartridges and plus P+, plus you have that ability to shoot affordable ammunition as opposed to something like 5.56 or 7.62 by 39 by today's prices, 308 and things like that. So it's something that I really enjoy. Also, suppression is something that's really, really cool about 9mm PCCs. You can easily suppress them. Suppressors are everywhere, and a 147 grain subsonic ball is relatively easy to come by and not super expensive. So if you have any questions about the PCCs or 9mm or anything like that, you can ask those questions down below. I do try to stick around for the first couple of days after we post a new video to answer any questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, please swing by and check out our Patreon page. There's a link down below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and subscribe button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash either one of those buttons. You can help support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Thank you for 17 years of support. Swing by, check out Copper Custom, and we will talk to you guys soon.